guys, it's always a thrill to be with you. Today we're going to go over the TriQuest 101 calculator with the advanced session. What I'm going to cover today with you is using the IUL tab to explain the policy corridor and dispelling the myth comparing the cost of the Index Universal Life to a taxable account. So let me go ahead and get started. Steve Buller, Eagle team member Steve Buller, is on the call with me today. While you ask your questions, and don't hesitate to type them in as you ask your questions, he will be answering them as we go along. If he has a question that he can't answer, he'll let me know. Covering the IUL tab, the IUL cost comparison, and the alternative investment tab today should give you some mechanics or idea of how to get this data in and manipulate it so that your client can see and compare and ask you all kinds of questions. I pulled up, I think this is the client that I used on Tuesday for the basic training. If not, this will suffice. But if you go into the client info page, you got all of the stuff here, which is your standard information coming from your confidential questionnaire. What I want to do is I'm going to go in here and clear all of this for you. I'm going to clear the IUL. So when you go to the IUL tab, it looks like this. And then when you go to the IUL comparison tab, I'm going to clear that too. It looks like this. So you've got two areas in the calculator that has the ability to import Index Universal Life illustrations. One is the Index Universal Life cost comparison, and the other one is just the Index Universal Life illustration itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the client's annual contribution tab, which is where we would have already built the case. And in this particular case, we have a $264,000 GSP and a $100,000 1035, making it a $364,000 guideline single premium. 264 minus the 1035. So what I did was I just went into the client's information and clicked on add to the plan, add to the plan. You'll notice that I have a $25,000 equity distribution on a mortgage and a $20,000 loan payout. So we're going to offset or pay off some of the client's non-deductible debt, which is an auto and a student loan, and be able to now deduct that because that is less than $100,000 worth of equity. So we're going to turn that non-deductible debt into deductible debt. It's a wash as far as the assets are concerned, except now we have the ability to write off that interest on the mortgage, and we actually reduce the mortgage payment. So we got rid of these payments as well, which is the $6,000. So we recaptured the payment on the debt, we lowered the mortgage payment, and we paid off the non-deductible debt. I redirected the $15,000 qualified plan into the IUL and paid the tax, and I moved the non-qualified asset, which is the $85,000. This is the life insurance product. So if you go back to the client's information and you look at the life insurance tab, I just put a variable life product in here by Mass Mutual. $500,000 face, $10,000 premium, $100,000 cash value. And I added that to the plan. So what that's going to do is it's going to pick up the premium, it's going to pick up the cash value. When I go to the annual contribution page and I turn these on, so let's turn them off real quick. The life insurance move or replacement, there's nothing there. If I turn on the 1035 exchange from 0 to 1, there's the $100,000, and if I turn on the life premium for 5 years, then I can run that all the way across if I'd like, but right now I'm just going to use a 5-year plan. So there's your $10,000 for 5 years. So if you look at this plan design for this client, typically what you're going to see in a present position 9 times out of 10 is their savings and their distribution it doesn't last long enough. And So in this particular case, I don't know why I got the distribution starting in year 71. Maybe they're going to retire at 70, but this was just a case that I just grabbed. And so what I want you to pay attention to is not so much the present position and the future position as far as the legitimacy of it, because I kind of just threw this together. What I want you to see is how the IUL tabs work and the cost comparison work. So if I look at the IUL tab, I want to bring in the illustration here, and I want to be able to use this corridor tab to show the client how life insurance works. One of the myths about life insurance is that it's an expensive product to own. It is an expensive product to own if you don't get the policy into corridor, because the mortality cost goes up every year, and that is a true statement. When any financial advisor, financial entertainer, or CFP or CPA or any financial professional tells a client you don't want to use a life insurance policy because it's expensive, that's an accurate statement if they would follow that statement with life insurance is expensive if you don't get the product into corridor. But that is never followed by that statement. What I tell my clients is that life insurance is not expensive if you get the policy into corridor. Matter of fact, there is no other financial vehicle in the country that will outperform an index universal life product that is in corridor for two reasons. The first reason is the gains are not taxable. So that's hard to make up in an equity account or a fixed account. I don't care if it's a mutual fund. I don't care if it's a municipal bond. I don't care if it's a CD. I don't care if it's a stock portfolio. When you take the tax liability off the gains, it is very difficult to compete with the index universal life crediting. The second component that the policy has in corridor that most products don't have is that it has the ability to lock in the gains from year to year without any risk from year to year if the market tanks. So you're working in a true compounding exponential growth curve, meaning that you're on a constant growth curve without any dips in it. And with a constant growth curve of 5 to 8%, depending on the product and depending on what's going on in the age of the client, even a 5% constant compounding growth curve is going to outperform all of these equity accounts, and I'll prove it to you just in a moment. But I want you to notice that this tool right here is one that I use often, the IUL illustration in the corridor tab. That is located at the bottom. I'm sorry. The IUL tab is located 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth tab down from the top, and then the other tab is 1, 2, 3, 4 tabs from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. The IUL cost comparison. So let me show you how I use these tabs when I have a conversation with my client, and how I'm going to build the policy is I'm just going to go to the annual contribution page and assume that this is the client's plan design. I also want to bring your attention to this area up here where it says calendar year 2013. You can change this to the year that you're currently working in, and it will change the years incrementally going forward. So if this plan wasn't going to be built until 2015 and we're in 2014, you can actually put 2015 there. Okay. So this white area, this is where you can actually change the data, and you can change the year. So this is, I just added that a couple of versions ago. I was always making that a default of the current year, but the problem is I got you guys, some of you guys are using the Wealth Accelerator as your tool to create discretionary, and you're using the discretionary for the first 2 years, so 2014, 2015, you're using the discretionary to pay off consumer debt, and then you're building the policy in 2016. So you could actually come in here and put 2016 going forward on those cases on your discretionary cases. Okay. So here's your GSP 364-095. I hope everybody can see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over to the illustration software, and we're going to build this case for you. Okay, so let's go to the client, and let's look at the client again and see what the client's age is. So if we go to the client page, here's his page. He was born on February 12th, 1960. So we'll go back to the client information on the Allianz illustration, and we'll go client, February 12th, 1960. He's 54 years old. I'm going to make him a Virginia resident. I'm just going to say he's a preferred non-tobacco. We can make him standard. We can make him whatever you want. It'll work the same. So then I'm going to go into, now I got the client information here. I'm going to go into the death benefit, and I'm going to need to calculate the minimum face on the death benefit. So I'm going to put minimum death benefit, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to put the 364,095, so that's our magic number, 364,095. So I'm going to put that right there. 364,095 is the basis as well. I'm going to put no premium, and I'm going to say calculate the minimum face. So the minimum face for this, here's the GSP, 364,095. Here's the minimum face, 1,128,992. So I'm going to highlight that and copy it. I'm going to go back up here to other. I'm going to change this 250 to the 1,128,992, and we're going to take that until the 12th year, and then I'm going to add the 13th year. I'm going to bring it down to 600 because I'm trying to stay in the corridor, 13th to maturity, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to find out what the 7 pay is. So the 7 pay is, let's take this out. The reason I'm putting 100,000 in there is because the 100,000 is what the 1035 actually is, and so it's going to give me the accurate 7 pay. So there's my 1,128,000, right? That's my death benefit. There's my guideline single premium, 364,095, and here's my 7 pay, 56,397. So where does that go? We go back over to the here. And we're going to put that here. 56,397 goes in the annual premium. And when I do that, it's going to calculate it for me. So what's the first year's premium? 56,397 plus the 100. That's the biggest advantage of a 1035 exchange, is that you can get the 1035 exchange in the policy in the first year in addition to the 7 pay premium. So now I can get the 100,000 from the old policy, which has already waited all of the time that it was required to get the money into the first policy, so it's already paid the price of time. It's going to be able to be dumped in year 1. IRS is okay with that, plus the 7 pay. So there's your 156,397. So we go back over to the policy, and we have our 1,128,000. We have our $600,000 drop down in the 13th year. We have our $100,000 1035 exchange, and then we're going to put in our annual premium of $56,397. We're going to do that from year 1 to year 5, and then we will do a quick review to make sure that that matches our annual breakdown page. So if you look at year 1 through 5, it says 156,397, 56,397 3 times, and then 38,507. So let's go back over to our 101, and let's see what that does. 156,397, 356,397 3 times, 38,507. This matches this. So the client now has two uniformed documents showing the same premium. The annual breakdown page that they can take home with them and the actual illustration that you run. If you look over to the right, you can see the death benefit is $1,128,000. It stays $1,128,000 until the 12th year. Then it drops into corridor. How do I know it's into corridor? Because I set the face to 600 and it's at 791. So it's at $191,000 more than what I set the minimum face. So I know that it's automatically jumped into corridor and it's growing every year. So now I want to bring this into the illustration. I want to bring this illustration into our 101 to see the corridor and see cost comparison. But before we do that, the whole purpose of doing this was looking at their present position. They were going to run out of money at age 75. And in the future position, we've moved dollars away from them, and now they're going to run out of money at 71. So we look at the consolidated page, and we fix this. So remember how this is fixed. We go to the future position, and we look at what is the differential between what they're taking in their present position and what they're taking and it's running out in the future position. So we have 100,282 here. And so I'm going to take that number, 100,282, and I'm going to subtract what's going to be taken out of the last distribution of the future position, 80,101. And that leaves me with 20,181. So I need 20,181 here in this field here, added to that 80 to match that 100. So I'm going to go over to the life insurance policy and I'm going to add that. So let's go to the distribution area. Turn on the distributions to participating loans. We're going to specify amount, and we're going to specify the 20,181. That's what we need to subsidize the income in that year, and it's the 17th year. So in year 17 to 17, I need 20,181. So if I go back, you'll see that. What year am I in? Year 17. Year 17. I need $20,000. So I go in here and I put the $20,000. Then I add a row. What do I need in year 18 going forward? On a static distribution, I need 100,282. So I come over here and I put the 100,282. And I'm going to start that in year 18 to maturity. And let's see what that looks like. So now we've got the premiums in there that comes from the wealth transfers and from the finding of the money. We've actually subsidized their income here, and it runs all the way out to age 120. So we've solved the problem. And so to bring that solution into the 101 calculator, make it more visual, you want to go highlight this. So all I did was put my pointer on it, hold it down, and highlighted just the area of the illustration. I'm going to right click on it. It's going to bring up a menu, and I'm going to say copy right there. Copy. It just copied that data that's light blue to the clipboard of the computer. I'm going to go to my 101 calculator, and I'm going to bring up my templates. Remember our templates that we built the other day in the basic training? And I'm going to go to my 101 templates, and I'm going to open up my IUL illustration for Allianz, and here's the template. Keep in mind that on the Allianz template, there's two tabs at the bottom. The import tab is the data that the 101 calculator needs. This is not an area that you're going to write in. You're going to go to the copy illustration tab, which is blank. Go to the very A1 cell and right click, bring up your menu, and go down to paste, and then hit paste. So there's the data. There's all the data that came off of that. So if you look at this data, 55 years old, there's the premium, there's the distribution, there's the face amount, if you look at that, that matches this. Now we don't need all of this information. So when we go back to the spreadsheet, and by the way, I get this question a lot, how am I going from here to here so quickly? All you do is hold your Alt, the ALT tab or key that's on your keyboard right beside your space bar. There's a key that says Alt, ALT. Hold that down and then tap your tab key and let go. And it'll flip from one application to another. So I can flip through all my applications by doing that. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to look at this. This is my my spreadsheet, and if I look at the import page, that's nice and pretty. It's got the labeling at the top, and then I can go File, Save As, and it's going to bring up my my pages. So let's call this Client Advanced. So I could go to Client Data tab and say I want to save this as Mr. Brown, Mr. Smith. I'm just going to say Client Advanced Training. So that's now the client in the client data file, and I'll put underscore IUL illustration, IULL for. So now when I save that, I know where that is, and I have it for if I need it for future use. It's also going to be the file that I'm going to import. So you can see that there's the premium, there's the distribution, there's the values, cash value, surrender value, death benefit. Now, let's go back over to the 101. We're in the 101 calculator. I'm on the client info page, and I want to put this data inside this client's file so that I have it for future use and for annual reviews. So I go to IUL tab, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. We'll open up the tab, and it's blank. So what do I need to do to bring that in here? I click this button right here. It says Import Illustration. I'm going to click the Import Illustration button, and it's going to bring up a menu. It's going to say, where is the file? This menu is, that's what that menu is saying. Where's the file? You're going to look through your files and go, where's my file? Oh, there's my 101 data. I'm going to click on that. Where's the file? It's under Client Data. Click on that. And Client Advanced Training IUL Illustration. We'll click on that. And as soon as I click on that file, it's going to import it into the software. So I did that so that you could have real easy access to get that data into the 101 software. Now, what did that do? I'm going to tell you a couple of things that it did. First of all, when it comes in, just hit Save. That way it doesn't, you don't lose the data. I don't know if it's necessary, but I do it anyway because that's what the Save button is for. Now, if I go over to the Consolidated Data distribution page, it should have brought this information in. So if I go to that page and I look, and there it is. So what I see is I was going to run out of money at 75, and I took some of that money and I put it away into another vehicle, and now I don't run out of money at all. And so before I was going to run out of money in year 21, now I can actually go to life expectancy, which is 92. I plug in the 38th year. I increase my income by $1.7 million. I increase my total estate by 2.4. That's not uncommon to see a big number here. That's why I always tell my clients I'm worth at least $1 million to you. Chris has done a great job of putting a PowerPoint presentation together, and it says on the very first slide, I'm worth $1 million to you. In this particular case, you're worth $2.4 million to your client. So this brings this information in so that you can compare current position to a future position. Sometimes it's not this drastic. It could be only $100,000 or $200,000 difference. It doesn't matter if it's a $200,000 difference or if it's a $2 million difference. It's better. Let's go to the IUL tab again, and I see John's asking me what the illustration rate is. Really, John, what does it matter in this particular example? If I ran it at 3 or I run it at 10, the point is how I want to show you how you take an illustration from the Allianz illustration software and get it into this calculator. You can run it at any rate you'd like. Matter of fact, this is a fictitious case, so those numbers don't even mean anything. If you look at the corridor, here's what I want you to get, though. This is the most important thing. When you're sitting down with a client and explaining the cost of an IUL, they have been told over and over and over again that it's expensive. What I want you to show them is, yes, it's expensive here. And if that distance between the insurance and the cash value stayed that wide all the way through the life of the policy, it would continue to stay expensive. But like an equity account, when it gets this much expense in the latter days, the IUL is an inverted asset that has the cost in the earlier days during the funding period when you're in your earning years, when you can afford the cost. When you're in your retirement years and you're having large costs, which is higher taxation and higher fees on a larger account value, that asset has this large cost when you need the money the most. With an IUL, your cost gets less when you need the money the most. I'm taking distributions here, probably around here. That's where that little blip is. And that right there, that cost, and you're going to see that in a minute, that cost is going to stay fairly consistent all the way through the contract. We capitalized on that cost or optimized that cost in year 12 by dropping the face from $1,000,001 to $700,000. So we closed that corridor, and I would explain to my client, we closed that corridor for the sole purpose of being able to get that policy as efficient and effective as possible. Keep in mind that 9 times out of 10, when you drop this policy from $1,000,001 to $700,000, they still are going to have 30% to 40% more life insurance than they had when they met you. What happens in the illustration, though, if we weren't taking distribution, so let's go back to the actual policy illustration. If I turn off the distribution, if you notice that if you turn off the distributions just so that you can visualize and see, if you drop it from 1.1, it only takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In the 7th year, from the year that you drop it to the year that equals what you dropped it to. But because you were able to drop it into this corridor, the efficiency of this cash, where you have a right here, a $790,000 policy and a $664,000 cash value, because that corridor got so close, now this money can grow very quickly, or this money can grow very quickly, and it will drive that death benefit up. So it optimizes the cost. So let me show you, going back to the illustration, or going back to the corridor example. We get it here, we get it in optimization, but let's look at some, and I would get my clients this far, and most of them were going, I got it. I said, okay, but then we created this tab, which is the cost comparison, and this tab is to dispel the myth that life insurance is more expensive than anything else out there. And you'll notice at the top of this worksheet, you can pick the S&P returns to compare this equity account to. This equity account over here is using the S&P for the last 30 years. So it's looking from 2013 back 30 years. So you know what these returns are in this comparison. It's a 30-year look back from the end of last year. So 2013 back. You can change that to a static rate. You can turn it to whatever rate you want, up to 15%. Okay? You can go to 1 all the way up to 15. So you can use an equity index or you can use a static rate of return. I'll show you in a minute what that does. Your ordinary income tax rate, you can put whatever you want in here. You can put a 15, a 20, a 28, a 33, a 40. I put 28 ordinary, 2% management fee. You can put a 1% management fee. You don't have to put any management fee in there. And then you can have a term insurance cost. One of the things that I recommend that you do is in your browser, if you haven't already, go into your browser and in your favorites put you in a term quote engine. So in this particular case, if I go to this guy and I go, he's in Virginia and he was born on February 12th, 1960, and I want to compare apples to apples here, and I say he's a male, I'll use me, 6'3", never used tobacco. I'm going to put 1.1 here, and I'm going to use a 30-year term. I'm going to use the best class that he can get. Okay. If I hit compare, it's going to give me that $1.1 million quote, and it's going to give me Banner, American General, Lincoln, Transamerica, Prudential. So it looks like between all of these on a 30-year term, I got 55, 55, 55, 55, 59. So let's use 5,500. So if this client wanted to compare an alternative investment to buying term and investing the difference, he would have a 30-year $5,500 a year premium. So I would go back to the 101 and I would plug that number in there, that $5,500. So here's your term costs, $5,500, and now he's got a $5,500 term cost, a 1% management fee, a 28% ordinary income tax, and a taxable account, and we're using the S&P index averages. How do I get this data in here to compare the two? You go back to your illustration software. Okay, here we go. So I'm back to my client. So if I want to run the cost comparison report, I'm just going to go to reports. I'm going to go down the report column until I see policy, charges, and expenses. Now when you turn these on, when you turn this on, most of the time you're going to see all of the check marks already checked. So what I do is I turn them off and I just click on the policy, charges, and expense detail. So I turn it off here and I turn it on here. Turn on the policy, charges, and expense detail and hit create the report. I create the report, it's going to run my cost analysis or my breakdown of my cost summary. And here it is. If you want to see it in a smaller setting, here you go. So here's your premium going in. My premium charge is $7,800 in the first year. My per unit charge is $5,800, and my insurance cost is $3,500. My total cost in year one to put $150,000 in the policy is $17,000. Now, your client's going to look at that, or even an advisor could look at that and go, my gosh, that's going to cost me $17,000 to put $150,000 in this account. Next year is 12, the next year is 12, 12, 12, 11, 9, and it gets progressively less. What I want you to notice is it goes from 17,000 to down to 600 right here. Okay, and then it works its way up to 1,000. But what I want you to see on a chart basis, and this is why this is so powerful, I can highlight with my pointer, just highlight this whole area, right click on it and say copy. I can go back over to my 101 calculator and import this. I'm sorry. I want to get my template. So I copy the cost summary into my template. And so let me open my template. Here is my template, 101 template. Here is my cost report for Allianz. When I open that up, it's going to bring me this template that looks like this. It's only got one tab in the bottom. You notice it's got a little button that says separate the numbers. Sometimes when you copy and paste into this, it does this right here. How many of y'all have seen that before? You look at that and go, oh my gosh, it just put all of the numbers in one big column. If you look at that column in the data field right here, as you go down the field, you can see that all those numbers here are in one column. So what I did to make that easy for us to fix is I just put this little button right here that says separate your numbers. When you click it, it's going to ask you a question. It's going to say, do you want to replace the content of the destination cells? So it's saying is, do you want to take this information that's in column 1 and overwrite everything in column B through I? And you go, yes, and there you go. There's all the data that came out of the cost comparison report or the summary report, and now you have it in a really nice format, which is the spreadsheet. Now we can analyze this by going File, Save As. I'm going to go back over to my client's data folder. So I'm in my client data folder. This is my 101 data folder. I'm going to Client Data, and I'm going to say Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, or in this case, the Advanced Training 1 Cost Comparison. And then that'll save. So I'll save that. So now I've got that in my client data folder. If I go back over to the 101 calculator, now I can import that data. So now you're sitting here looking at your client's information. You're in the 101 calculator and you want to put that data in here. You're going to go down to the bottom of the page where it says IUL Cost Comparison tab and click on the tab. When you open up this tab, you can set your parameters at the top or you can leave them alone. But then you're going to click this button that says Import the Worksheet, and you're going to say, where is it? So it's going to bring up your desktop. Go to your 101 data folder. Go to your client folder and look in there and say Advanced Training 101 Cost Comparison Spreadsheet. And it's going to bring up your spreadsheet. So it's going to bring that in. And when it brings it in, it's going to bring it in for the past or the next 30 years, and it's going to evaluate a 30-year period. What I'm using for the crediting rate, which is your return here, is it's using the S&P index, and it's going back from 2013 all the way back to whatever 30 years was from there is. So here's your 30-year historicals. If you don't want to use an index, you want to just put a flat average return, come in here and put a flat average return. So if you think you can make 7 or 7.5, you can click that and put that there. What I want you to notice, though, is what this calculator does is that if the area is green, it turns from white to green, that is when the equity account is more expensive than the life insurance policy. Now you'll notice that in year 1 through 4, even with a 7.5% return on the equity account, this policy is less expensive by the 5th year. And the reason that is because here's your total cost. In year 1, my total cost on the life policy is $17,000. My total cost on the equity with a 7.5% return is, with the gains and with the term insurance, it's costing me 10, 17 and 10. Here's 12 and 12. Here's 12 and 14. Here's 12 and 16. So now, by the time you get to the 5th year, the accumulative cost on the life insurance and the cumulative cost on the equity has exceeded the life insurance policy by $5,000. There is your gross total amount of $5,074 more expensive on the equity side than the life policy in year 5. Then in year 6, it's a total of $14,000 more. By the 10th year, your total cost in the equity has exceeded the life insurance policy by $60,000. If you look at this over a 30-year period on a 50-year-old or 55-year-old, by their 84th birthday, the life insurance policy has totally cost them $148,000, and the equity has cost them $796,000, the difference of $650,000. So which one was more expensive? Now, you can come in here and tweak these numbers if you think the management fee should be zero because you can buy an equity index without a management fee. We'll turn it off. Okay? You can see that it helps a little, but not a lot. If you think that the taxes are not going to be 28, you think they're going to be 15, then it helps a little. But over a 30-year period, it doesn't help a lot. 148 versus 500, you're talking about a $330,000 differential in a 15% tax bracket. If they're going to take the 30-year term. If they're not going to get the term and they're not going to get any life insurance, even without the cost of the life insurance, you put them back to what they're really in, their tax bracket, and reality what their management fee is without even any term cost, the IUL still surpasses the equity in the 8th year, and by the 30th year, you're still talking about a $500,000 differential in costs. This is a very, very powerful page. What's nice about this is it's got a visual. The visual is the crossover chart. When you click on this tab that says crossover chart, it actually shows your client in a visual form on a graphical scale when the IUL cost, pass, and where the equity account surpasses the cost of the index product. So you can see here, out of the gate, the IUL is more expensive than the equity, and then by the time you get to the 4th year, the crossover point happens where they're even, and then the IUL gets less expensive on an annual basis, and the equity gets more expensive on an annual basis. Very powerful visual. So you have the policy fee comparison page that you can use to dispel the myth of life insurance is expensive. You can use the IUL tab to show them why advisors that are not aware of how a corridor works would say that it is expensive. If I were to go back to that illustration, let's just do that because we have a few minutes. Let's go back to the illustration. And let's fund it with Target. Okay? Let's just take this out. Let's take this to maturity. And let's fund this with Target to maturity. Let's take the loans out. And let's do a quick analysis of this so you can see. This is what your financial professionals are saying that it's expensive. Oh, let's take it's because of the 1035, it's not going to allow you to put the target in year 10 and 11. And in 12 and then back in 13 you can. So let's take the 1035 out just so that you can see what's going on here. Okay, so there's your target, consistent. If I were to take this and put it in my IUL illustration, you will be able to see, I'm going to go to the template. Let's go to the IUL template. Let's call this, let's go back to our, and let's go back here. Let's clear the values and let's import that. Now you can see because it's not in corridor, Where is the cash? It doesn't get into corridor until the 20th year. You see, we got this big delta here, and we don't drop into corridor in year 10 or 12 like we did in the other one. So we've got this big delta here, and then it doesn't get closed until the about the 20th year. So it takes 20 years to get this policy in corridor using target versus taking 13 years. We got $600,000 in cash, and we had about $700,000 in death benefit. So in the 13th year, we had it in corridor. So that would have been back here. We would have seen that drop down, and it would have been corridor there versus there. So it gives you a visual of, because it took so long to get into corridor, it would be more expensive. And even if they did this, this is a lot of money. This is $300,000, and this is $30,000 a year, and they're doing this forever, all the way to age 120. So if I took the same the premium, so let's look at the premium that we put in. We put in what, $364, so that's 12 years. So if I go back to the policy and changed it to 12 years on the premium, now you'll see a big difference. So that's the same amount of premium. That we put in, but we forced it in over a 5-year period. We're going to clear the values, and then we're going to import the data. So there's the same premium, $360. Now look at how long it takes to get it into corridor. Now it's like 26 years to get it into corridor versus 13. So when you funded it the way that we did, the $360 as quick as we could, instead of doing it over a target premium, the corridor was created in the let's call it 26 versus 13. That gives you an idea of how powerful it is to get the policy into corridor so quickly. So when an advisor tells a client, well, this thing's expensive, well, that could be expensive all the way up until the 20th year or even into the 24th year. But then it gets into corridor. So it takes 24 years to get inexpensive, where if you fund it properly, build it correctly, you can actually have it outperforming an equity in, what did we say, 5 years? 8 years. If it has term insurance, $5,500 in 4 years. So if they're going to buy the term and invest the difference, it becomes much more efficient even in the 4th year. Any questions that Steve hasn't been able to answer? Steve, you got any questions that these guys I didn't cover?
No, pretty easy and basic. You did a good job, Merle.
Okay, good. Is there anything that...
a lot of good comments.
Good. Is this, guys, is there something that you want me to show you? I got a few minutes here, or you got this? Because this is going to be recorded. I'll take the basic training that we did Tuesday, and I'll take this train here and get it posted tomorrow. Keep in mind, I want to show you another tab that works with what I just showed you, the IUL tab and the IUL cost tab. When you look at the alternative investment tab, when you click on reload premium, the tab will be highlighted. you can actually go in here, and if you look at your IUL tab, and you had done this the way that we originally had, where we had the $364,000 coming in and we had the $100,000 coming out, and we were doing that from I think it was the 17th or 18th or 20th year going outward. If you take those same numbers and plug it into an alternative investment calculator like this one, so if I say I want to make $100,000, it was $100,282, and I'm in a 20% or 28% tax bracket, and I have a 1% load and a management fee, it's going to tell me that I need a gross number of 139. It must have some kind of inflation factor on it. Here it is. I'll turn this off. So you're going to need a 139,281 to net the 101 that we're pulling out of the policy. So if you were to be able to take this 156 and then this 56 every year and then this 38 in your 5 to put in an alternative investment, this is an alternative investment calculator. You can change the rate here and see what it would have to do to take this out to age 120. Keep in mind we were able to run $100,000 net out to 120. So at 9%, it would carry them to 84. At 10%, it would carry them to 90. So they would have to make over 10% a year in an alternative investment account just to be able to net the 101 that we were getting out of the life insurance policy. And I don't believe I have any insurance costs in here. I don't. So if I put the current life insurance cost in here, and I had an annual premium of $5,500, and that started, it was for 30 years, and it started in year 1, and I showed that, then you can see that here's the $5,000 premium, here is the interest, and here is the management fee, and here is the taxes. Where's my taxes? Management fee, interest. Where's my taxes? I don't see my taxes. Oh, it's showing my gross withdrawal. That is my taxes. So there's my 100. There's my gross 139. So the taxes is 38. So it's adding it to the tax, or adding it to the gross withdrawal. So they would have to have a tremendous rate of return to outperform that IUL using this. So you can use this as well. This is a really nice piece to be able to do that. Taxable account. This is assuming that it's not a qualified account, Tommy. So if I'm running a taxable, if I'm running a qualified account and I'm doing a distribution of 100,000, I need to take out 139,000. But if I'm paying the taxes annually on the growth, that's a taxable account, so I just need to take out the 102. So that's just switching back from a taxable to a non-taxable or a qualified account. If I'm going to pay the taxes from the account, then it's going to reduce the account pretty substantially. So it just shows you that if I'm using a qualified account or a non-qualified account with those buttons. Good question. Okay. Well, I'm going to end this for now. With that, you guys have a great week. I look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks, Steve.